And it looks like we are recording. I want to, in this little production, say something about industry in pre-railroad Greensburg, Pennsylvania, and Hempfield Township. That'll mean before 1850. And industry in that period probably doesn't mean the same thing, or won't mean the same thing as it means to most people nowadays. We used to characterize our prehistoric ancestors by the type of industry they had. You know, we talk about the Stone Age, where they were making tools out of stone. We talk about the Iron Age, when they started to make their tools, weapons out of iron. There was a Bronze Age. Actually, the Bronze Age came before the Iron Age, but all that doesn't matter anymore, does it? We're in a totally different age now, the digital age, electrical, computerized equipment that we're making. They are our chief and major tools. And we're going to be visiting a time of industry, of making things somewhere between the Stone Age and the computer age. These traditions of making things will be almost all from Europe, imported from across the sea. And if you've ever heard the term cottage industry, that very much applies. Things that were made very much at home, you know, in the cottage where you lived. Industry had not been separated from living. It was very much an integral thing with the life of people then. I was surprised to find a census of Greensburg done in 1799, and it included the things that people did, you know, the way they made things in 1799. And at the risk of being boring, I'd like to just make a couple notes. It's surprising how many people there were making things, considering the small number of people in the town. There were 6 shoemakers. There were 4 each of carpenters, blacksmiths, and saddlers. There were 3 each of hatters who made hats, wheelwrights who made wheels, tailors and tanners who made leather. There were 2 each of printers, tinsmiths, and clockmakers. And there was 1 each of potter, a nailer who made nails, a wagon maker, a brickmaker, and a weaver. And before we go to look at pictures from that early time, I want to mention that what we're going to look at first was Dutchtown, that section of Greensburg between what we now know as Bunker Hill and Main Street, where the thrifty, hardworking Germans settled. We'll see what the town looked like then and what they were making. Hold on. We are looking at Greensburg's first manufactory over there on the right. This was an old Dutch town, and it's a place where Christian Pershing settled not long after the Revolutionary War. The house and the workplace he built, and they were places that were considered by the local people as important places. Pershing, in his workplace, made cloth. He wove coverlets and other things out of fabric. He also made gunpowder there. Pershing was a fellow who did a lot of things in the early town. People knew him. He went to the local barn raisings and log rollings. He was accorded status as best man in many of these events, so apparently a guy to be taken into account, not to be considered lightly. This is Pershing's manufactory many years later, and it stood there in town quite a while. It was sold by him around 1810 to Jacob Rue. It eventually came into the hands of the Jennings family, who ran it as a smithy, a blacksmith shop. And eventually the Potts family got it. This shows where Pershing's place was. This up here is Bell Way, which was certainly not there when Pershing was there. Out here we're looking from Pittsburgh Street, we're looking north, and that's what's there right now. Now these both rectangles show the same plots in old Dutchtown, only this one is from contemporary courthouse sources. This one down here is a map that I put together from very old courthouse documents. And this down here is where Christian Pershing had his place. Up here is the same place in contemporary mapping. Up here is where Henry Welty and his family lived, right beside the Coons Tannery. The tannery was right here. And up here was the public spring. Further up here, at the corner of Pittsburgh Street in Pennsylvania, was Jacob Hugus, one of the most inventive characters the early town saw. He was a clockmaker and made inventions and had the first steam engine in the area, though not in town. This is mapping, trying to show the Coons Tannery. This is where they lived. A brother of the Coons family, Philip, had a tavern, and the Germans hung out here. This is where they had their political meetings. They were called Democratic Republicans then. They would now be called Democrats. Up here was the place where Jacob Hugus had his home and clock manufactory. Down here, Christopher Truby made pottery. And Henry Fess was a weaver. He had a place over here. Turney's, father and son, were tinsmiths. They had a shop here. And we will move on briefly to show you the Coons Tannery on Pittsburgh Street. And this is Union Alley running up here. The Coons family lived here. The Weldy family lived down here. Pershings would have been down here. Across the street would have been the Trubys. And we might note that no one lived in a tannery. They were foul-smelling places. I'm surprised they actually lived that close to it. And we're going to shut this down now, and it'll continue in the next episode.